Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Just notice this. It's like every time we press live, it starts at like 10 seconds, which I don't think it was live when I pressed it. But anyway, happy Wednesday. We have some things to discuss today. We're getting closer to the bubble, and the preparations are being made in Toronto. They're putting up lots of fencing around the Scotiabank Arena, and
to keep the media out or the fans.
It's to keep the well.
Well, I would say riffraff, but depends on how you define it.
Does that cover both groups there, Jan?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there you go. All right. We'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. I want to do this slow clap for the Kansas City Royals.
Oh, yes.
Who very deceptively hit 3 Houston Astros yesterday to the point that Larry Chipper Jones had to go on ESPN today and say on each pitch, that wasn't on purpose. Now, why would he pitch that if it was on purpose? And look, all I have to tell you is pitchers have pinpoint accuracy. Once in a while, one gets away. 3 don't get away from 2 different pitchers and 2 from the same. Ask Sean Estes, who didn't know how to hit Roger Clemens. He didn't throw a 100-mile-an-hour heater when he went to do it either. So it doesn't matter how many miles per hour it is. They did it. They got away with it. And look, they got hit a lot before summer camp and before the COVID pause. So they definitely got hit because of what's happening. This is how you police baseball. I truly agree that it's 100% right, and it's going to happen all season long. It will. Now, this was the best time to do it, though. This was the best time because these games don't matter. Who cares? One of the defenses was, well, why would he hit him with the bases loaded? Because the game doesn't mean anything. Right. But they happen to hit their 3 best players. It's not like they went and hit any other players. They hit their 3 best players. So congrats to the Royals.
Oh, I'm sorry that I hit you on the wrist. Oh, it's like, yeah. So honestly, it's like this is going to. Now, this is the thing. It's incumbent upon the AL Central, because everything is interdivision, and the NL Central. So I am really hoping that Cubs pitchers and Cardinals pitchers, especially them, because they'll only face these teams once a year. I hope they beam them in the back every chance that they get. They deserve it. They're getting off light because they're not going to be playing against the entire league. I'm sorry. There has to be some comeuppance for the Houston Astros for being a bunch of disgusting cheaters. Yep. And I'll tip my hat to the Kansas City Royals, but this can't be it. It's got to be. I hope they get beamed 50 of the 60 games. I really do.
Thank God Mike wasn't around during the Ralph Frank, Bobby Thompson home run era, because he clearly would have gone off in it. I will use the line that everybody uses: "If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying."
Okay,
I'm not saying they're blameless, but let's not make believe there's nobody else in the league that's cheating, Mike. Here, so we should get off the moral majority high horse and recognize that everybody cheats. They took it a level beyond. There's no question about that. The Red Sox cheated. They talk about a slap on the wrist. They got more of a slap on the wrist, and there was a partial investigation for your team in the Bronx a little bit over some stuff that went on also.
Yeah, but they didn't.
Let's not make look. I'm not advocating they shouldn't be hit, but let's not make believe they're the only ones who are doing it.
I'm not saying that they're the only ones doing it. And by the way, it's like they didn't discover the cheating in the Branka Thompson situation until the 80s. So you're going to throw pitches at 70-year-old players?
I think the point has already been made, Mike. There's already been 3 players on the Astros who've been beamed at this point now. I don't think it needs to continue any further than that. The point has been made. Let's play baseball. It's enough of this.
This is what happens when you don't have fighting in a sport, is all I have to say. You need this.
It always works in the NHL that guys never win against anybody.
3 strikes, 3 beans. That's it.
If that's the case, I hope the Royals sign Darryl Strawberry so he can do to the Astros what he did to Armando Benitez back in the 90s. Beat the crap out of him. After he beamed Tino Martinez.
I prefer Al Nipper spring training in 87 what he did.
Honestly, Mike, you picked a situation where Met fans didn't even care about that. Like, no, Met fans didn't like Armando Benitez.
Yeah, but he was with the Orioles at that point.
Oh, no, he was with the Orioles then, yeah.
So I personally like the one, I think it was Piazza and Pena when he chased them down and ran after him. So that was a better one.
Yeah, don't bring up Piazzi when it comes to Roger Clemens.
The guy. I was at that game. That's a story for another day.
All right.
Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right, let's try the show. Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
It's great to be back, man. I've had a couple hellish, like 5 hellish days. So it's really nice being with you guys again.
Are you wearing a Habs jersey?
No, I am not. But thanks for asking. I am wearing. Someone sent me this. Because they know I love obscure jerseys. This is the Calgary Cowboys.
there you go.
Oh, okay.
A WHA team played in for 2 years in the WHA. Yeah,
I think I remember that.
cool jersey. It's like the biggest jersey I've ever been sent, though. I have to tell you, it's like just among. I mean, you can't even really tell, but it's just like it is huge. I mean, absolutely huge, and it's cool. Very, very cool. I could wear this. I could wear this under. I could wear my goalie equipment. Like I could wear 2 goalie equipments under this.
So somebody who was really fat and lost weight decided to send you the sweater. That's nice.
Jared from Subway. He doesn't need it anymore.
There you go. So there was now they sent me a name. I don't know this player at all, so maybe you guys can help me with this. All right, let me see. So this guy on the back here. So tell me who this is.
Ron Shipperfield,
There you go.
former Edmonton Oiler, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right. Yeah, this is the jersey. This is the name it came with. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, there you go. Well, let's get started. Everybody in the family is doing better. Thank you guys. Appreciate it for asking. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm pissed off that the Toronto Blue Jays shunned Buffalo for Pittsburgh, New York, and Washington. Right here, Blue Jays.
I'm Jan Levine and couldn't care less where their Toronto Blue Jays are going.
I'm Anthony Mingioni.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And yeah, we were. It's funny today. I saw online someone post that the Penguins are playing their home games in Toronto, and the Blue Jays are playing their home games in Pittsburgh. So there you have it.
Mm.
Welcome to the year of 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So anyway, a couple. Yeah, we are like Christmas is coming, as they say in the chat room. We are 1 week. Yesterday was the week until we actually start playing some of the practice games again. And actually today, 1 week from today, is it today? I think it's 1 week from today, right?
August 1st is the opener.
No, the actual practice, the actual preseason.
Oh, yeah, 28th and 29th.
Yep.
Yeah, so 6 days away.
16.
Just because we had a little breaking news just as we started the show, and figuring since it's a Flyers news, we should touch base on it. The Flyers announced the signing of Oscar Lindblom to a 3-year, $9 million extension.
Awesome.
Which okay. His recovery, him skating, everything is great news. Actually, if you look at his stats, he had 17 goals last year, 11 goals in 30 games this year until
he's having a great year. Yeah,
he's having a great year. I mean, I think if you need a signal, a clear signal that he is going to be, he's maybe in the clear health-wise, this is it, because I don't think the Flyers would be signing him to a 3-year extension if he wasn't clear health-wise.
And it goes a little deeper than that, because Fletcher basically stated as well, not only that he's going to be traveling, he's going to be traveling with the team to Toronto. Chuck Fletcher stated they're not ruling out anything with Lindblom. Said they're not ruling out Lindblom practicing or playing in Toronto, which is
that's astonishing.
This is from Jordan Hall from NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's really something. I mean, when you think about it, and it's funny because like with Lindblom, you would think here's
I'm leaving it on.
He's a risk case, right?
Exactly.
Like he's a risk case, right? I mean, like he's a risk. I mean, obviously,
I mean, we don't know if he's a risk case now. Maybe because, look, you're supposed to be a risk case with underlying conditions, but maybe they tested him and they said, you know what? Right now, we don't see you as a risk case.
Well, I believe it's like if you're undergoing chemo, you're more susceptible because of your immune system to infection. But if he's no longer on,
he's not on chemo. He ended it.
So that probably would mean that he's not.
And then also, you're probably going to one of the you're going to be probably in one of the safest environments you can possibly be in that bubble. To be honest, I mean, it's really beyond living here or wherever he's living right now. I mean, there's nothing going to be safer than the bubble in Toronto. I wouldn't think at this point.
That's a big motivating factor for the team because
I think that's really the big thing.
The team's really been behind that all year. It's definitely helped motivate him now. The only thing that could derail that is, and we got word that it's Carter Hart's back. He had back spasms yesterday.
Yeah.
I know everybody's looking at that and saying, it's probably nothing. That's okay. It is a little bit of a warning sign because this guy hasn't played.
Yeah.
And if he starts getting a cranky back, it is good that they have Brian Elliott because, like we were saying, with goalies, this is going to be a tough situation for goalies to play in this start them up again season. It is.
And Philadelphia is very fortunate in the fact that they have the round robin and not a play-in series.
Right.
In fact, they managed to get in, and that gives them a little bit of time and leeway to basically say, there's no real home ice advantage that you're really playing for necessarily. It's matchups that you're potentially looking at. And even then, they can, if they go to the bubble with Hart, they have at least one exhibition game that they're playing. They have 4 games before things really the chips really start to come into play.
Just think of it this way: even if they lost all 3 games of the round robin, they would end up playing Pittsburgh in the first round because Pittsburgh's the number 5 seed. So that's the worst case scenario, is them losing all 3, not playing Hart because of whatever problem he's having, and playing Pittsburgh. Now I'm sure you'd like to avoid Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh is a very tough first round matchup. But if that's your worst case scenario, then you can sort of baby Carter Hart through that round robin. I have a feeling, Anthony, that they'll end up like playing him a period here or there, or maybe play half a game, treat it like a preseason game, because really there are no stakes in these games.
What I think will probably happen is they may go through the exhibition games, see where things are at, get through the first game of the round robin. I think you at least want him to get at least a game or 2 in before jumping into the deep end of the pool there and making sure that he's in a good rhythm. He's your guy. And if Elliott gets a little bit of time here with the exhibition game and maybe that first game of the round robin against Boston, and then you go with Hart for the remaining 2, the results will be what they will be at that point. At least Hart is physically sound and ready to go with his back.
And just to touch on Lynn Blom one final time, it's a 3-year deal. At the end of it, he's still a restricted free agent, arbitration eligible, so they have control over him for another year. And for a guy who was on pace for 25 goals, which he was, he had 11 goals in 30 games. If he had continued on the way he was, $3 million a year is not bad at all. It's actually pretty affordable.
No, there's risk, and that's why, because there's risk.
Yeah. Now, if he's healthy and can play, which obviously they've seen him practicing enough and skating enough to know that he still has his legs, and there's things that he's going to get better, obviously, but they still see he's got the skills, and he's a highly skilled player. Like don't get yourselves wrong. Like, his play is, he's the kind of player that plays better with skilled players too.
And we all saw Eck when he played on that line with Couturier and Konechny. That was one of the best lines in hockey because of how well balanced they were, because he's got such a good defensive base and his offensive skills have started to emerge. It made for an incredibly complete line.
First couple of weeks of the season, he was one of their best, maybe their best player on the ice. And he was really just crazy in the beginning. He had definitely led the team in points for a while there. He was really killing it in the beginning of the season. And he reminds me, actually, it's funny because, he reminds me of like Sammy Kapanen in some ways. And it's just because he has the same kind of he's very, very smart defensively, has surprising skills. Like will pull out a skilled move that just sort of shocks you at times. And definitely, can play if he's with scorers, he can play a scoring role. If he's with defenders, he can play a defensive role. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge pickup for $3 million. He was, like you said, if nothing happens here, he's going on. He's definitely getting more than that moving forward. If he had played the whole year and was healthy, and
there's a quote also from Chuck Fletcher as well, indicating that Oscar said he's hoping this is the shortest contract he signs for the remainder of his career.
There you go.
But here's the elephant. You want to know the elephant in the room for this? This contract gets signed pretty quickly. We're not going to hear about an extension. Nolan Patrick will get a 1-year deal at some point.
Yeah.
Who knows when? But, Nolan Patrick's probably looking at this and saying,
yeah, he might just get the qualifying on.
No, that's what I mean. But,
yeah.
But, if this were any other year, he'd be looking at some sort of deal. And now he is going to have to accept some sort of 1-year lowball deal. Like that's
which is reasonable though. I mean, he missed an entire season. I mean, it's hard to say that It's hard to
No,
say.
but I'm just saying
We're going to get more than that anyway.
Who would think it would work out this way, that now Nolan Patrick is going to have to accept a 1-year deal before the season started, and then we heard about what happened with Lindblom, and he gets a 3-year deal. There's no way we ever could have.
Oh yeah, you would never think going into this year that Lindblom would be getting the better deal, and even and especially what happened. And as far as where you finish in this in the qualifiers, I kind of beg to differ. I think finishing last of the teams and playing Pittsburgh is a really big disadvantage. Like, I think compared to the other teams that are out there that you can play in the first round, I think the Penguins are by far the best of them.
Well, I'm just saying, Ack, that you're not going to rush Carter Hart back for the sole purpose of.
No, you're not. But you're going to try to avoid Pittsburgh.
Wait, so Ack, are you saying that the Penguins are going to steamroll the Canadians? Then is that what you're implying here?
I think that if the Penguins beat the Canadians, they will be the toughest.
If now it's if okay.
No, but if they win,
we got you back.
That's going to be the toughest series for the Penguins the rest of the way. You know that.
I will say this: Philadelphia does not want to go into. You don't want to be backing into into your postseason.
No, you don't want to back into it.
You're going to want at least to, if you could take a couple. They're tough matchups to begin with. Anyway.
Whoever's playing is going to try and win. Whoever's in the lineup.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. No, and I do think there's an advantage. I mean, there's a big advantage because how you look at this thing. Okay, so say if we all think the Rangers have it, everybody seems to think the Rangers have a shot at Carolina. I think that could be a little bit overstated. And I think the Rangers are almost too much of an underdog. Too much. This is the by far. Can we talk about how much of a crazy Rangers an underdog, but everybody thinks they're going to win thing this is when you see an underdog like this, obviously the matchups and everything jam, but come on, this is a little nerve wracking. At some point, it becomes like, wait a second, we want to keep the underdog thing. We're not really an underdog. Everybody says.
I mean, they could be the popular pick for the underdog, but we talked about it. If Carolina just gets any kind of goaltending, any kind, they're really the favorite because of their defense. And I don't think anybody should look past that. If they have, if their goaltending is mediocre, then yes, the Rangers have a definite shot.
Plus, there wasn't a big spread in terms of points. When you look at even the Islanders and Florida, you're talking a minimal spread in terms of points there either. So favorite and underdog is a kind of a misnomer to a certain extent in some of these series, just the way the seedings worked out by a couple of points separating each team.
Which is the same reason that I think that the Blue Jackets Leafs series is going to be tight, because they ended up with 81 points each, and the Blue Jackets were without a half dozen players for the last couple months of the season. Yeah. So they got all those guys.
That's definitely going to be a tough series.
Yeah. A little thing. Okay, we've been talking over the last week or so about a little frustration about how the league can't say somebody's out with COVID, and that there's no shame in somebody being tested positive. Well, Cam Neely's comments today, I think he's shaming a couple of the players on his team.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, here's the direct quote when asked about the organizational disappointment or second guessing of the decision making of David Pastrnak and Andrej Kase, who are purportedly positive, or at least have not been cleared as negative. Neely, of course, when we had the day that camp was starting, we knew that some players were going to have to quarantine when they got here. You kind of hoped that they would have gotten here a little earlier, but we didn't have any say in that. That was really left up to the players. Obviously, with what has played out and transpired, you would have hoped that some different decisions were made, but in the long run, I don't know if it's going to affect us once we get to Toronto. So basically what he's saying is that he didn't agree with what was part of phase 2 of the return to play, that he wanted the players to come back, not to be voluntary, but involuntary, get the hell back here so you're cleared. And then when they didn't do that, and they apparently were positive, and now, there's up to 10 players who've been out at some point with the Bruins, Neely is shaming Pastrnak and Kase.
I will say this. It's his two players, and I do have to wonder, knowing this, that they're two critical players, he can't necessarily say, but I mean, is it a case of he knows the reasons for what, knowing fully well what's going on with COVID-19? Were they in a place where that put them at a greater risk?
They weren't being smart.
And they weren't being smart. Right. And that's my interpretation there, I think, more from Neely. And I'm not trying to defend and shame. He may be just saying, listen, these guys put themselves at risk, and as such, could have potentially put our team at risk at the same time.
Right.
So that's maybe the other side of the coin here, Mike, that I'm looking at. I'm not saying, that it's, you kind of want to. I think you want to keep your commentary maybe to yourself right now, but we know how Cam is.
It feels like that. I totally agree with you, Anthony. I really do. Feels like exactly
that's my interpretation of it. That they're both check. They were both, potentially at a play, in places where they weren't protecting them, adequately protecting themselves.
But here's the reason why the PA and the NHL, why the NHL is controlling the message, because if it was up to the Bruins, based on this comment, they probably would have come out and said, "Oh, they had COVID, and we're pissed off that they got it because they were irresponsible." Here, they can't specify anything. They can't say yes. They can't say no. It's just they're unfit to play.
Yeah, I kind of wish we could go back and we had this bubble in 75, 76 for the Bruins, and Don Cherry would be the coach, and he'd be talking about Mike Milbury and Terry O'Reilly, how disappointed he was just being themselves. I mean, like that's I think Jeremy Jacobs has done a lot of translating through Cam Neely here. I think this sounds a lot like Jeremy Jacobs.
It does sound actually. They're probably right. I mean, this is definitely the kind of thing you could see them all talking about and being.
I'm pissed off that Milbury would beat somebody with a shoe. Anyway.
I mean, Razor brings up a
shoe broke the bubble.
It's funny. Razor brings up something in the chat room that I totally and 100% agree with. And so the guy, his name Razor Casas in the chat room. He says that the bubbles seem to be working, so why not get them there sooner right now? And I'm kind of on, obviously there's reasons because we can't in Canada. There's certain things, obviously the quarantine, different rules, right? But I do also agree that, things sort of accelerating quickly in down here in the U.S.
But that would mean ending or preempting the training camps that were only 12 days even further. And some of these teams, they need this time to sort of catch up on their systems.
I feel like they've had enough time though. Like,
is the league ready?
Is the league ready?
That's the thing. They're in the process of building all the things. They want to make sure. I think when those teams arrive, that boom, 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 we got everything in place. Here we go through the testing process, and they want to make sure everything. And maybe they're again with that timeline. We have to take into account the fact that this is a massive undertaking that we're talking about here. 12 teams in 2 cities. I mean, granted, you could say, well, you do this in tournaments, things that's right. This is a whole different ball game when we're talking about professional teams.
Yeah, you're talking about huge staffs and all that stuff.
Right.
You had 2 positive cases last week in 5 days of testing. So let's not make believe what's going on now isn't working. It's working very well, in fact, actually. We've seen numbers go down in MLB also. We've seen the NBA be okay because they're in the bubble. The fact they're having training camp here hasn't been an impediment. I mean, Kasha and Pasternak likely had it before they even arrived in camp.
Right.
Secondly, taking them to task now. Look, maybe they did what like the Blues did and went somewhere they shouldn't have. But I think, again, Mike, saying you can't say it's COVID, first of all, you can admit that the guy has COVID. You don't necessarily have to say where they caught it. That's not necessarily part and parcel of the equation of how you have to say it. And the fact that it wasn't said, we already know exactly what they're dealing with. So the fact they're using this terminology of obfuscation in terms of, it's unfit to practice, we have a kind of an idea in terms of what's going on. So they're going to go up to the bubble basically another day or so. They're getting the stupidity out of their systems now, hopefully. Yeah. We haven't had a lot of spikes in terms of positive cases. So I don't think we can say that what's going on now with training camps being in the individual cities has caused a problem in terms of numbers spiking across the league.
I will say this: I don't feel like they're getting out a second too soon, does it? I mean, it's like this is like
but also
stuff is happening in California and Florida, where some of these teams are, not California, but in Florida and Tennessee and places where these teams are practicing, and Texas. The quicker they get out of there, the quicker we're assured this is actually going to happen.
We talked about it. We all want them to get to the bubble quicker, but if they get to the bubble quicker, they're not going to get mints on their pillow for the first turn down service. There's no way.
Yeah, we might not.
I think they're going to storm the Bastille then, just like the NBA players did. Just don't.
Yeah, they don't get the right bedspread. Right, if they don't get the right bedspread, they're going to
no meals in a box.
Yeah, they won't be.
Can you imagine?
That's been happening.
It's like the NBA and MLB, some MLB guys especially. If the MLB was in a, it's just like, can you imagine like the dealing with a hotel like with some of the attitudes and some of those guys?
Yeah.
Well, Russ, they're not going to be.
I want to know who the official soft drink and beer is of the bubble. I mean, we can start advertising it that way, right?
Hey, Molson, let's go.
Molson, the official beer of the bubble. Something along those lines.
It'll be crushed cream soda.
Jägermeister. We already know the league's got Jägermeister going.
That's
already.
true.
So that in terms of there, but then you better make sure they're in an extra protective bubble in that circumstance.
Russ,
The Coke or Pepsi year, NHL.
They won't be leaving Andy's candies on the pillow. They'll be leaving your coffee crisps.
Here's a better question: Does Phil Pritchard have to stay up there with the cup during the entire tournament now?
Yeah, right.
No, I my guess is they're in Toronto. They'll just let him in that day. He'll be okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, you'd have to go to Edmonton anyway.
Oh, no, it's Edmonton. So yeah,
he'd have to travel to Edmonton. So
And
he's got to be out there for 14. Well, he's got to go. Well, he's already in Canada anyway, so he just has to fly out.
Yeah, he's in the country. It's not a big deal.
And the only way that you'll be getting complaints on Instagram from NHL players about the food is if in their lunch the potato chips are Lay's ketchup potato chips, because those things are friggin' disgusting.
There will be complaints. There will be pictures. It's going to happen.
Damn it, he wants his pickle crisp.
I'm not my pickle.
Let's talk rumors, can we? Sure.
We just did pickle crisp. There we go.
There we go. There's a pickle.
Culinary rumors. Come on, Ross.
Yes.
Come on, heck.
There you go.
Where's Gordon?
No, I agree. No one likes a mini bar more than I do. So hey, let's just continue on. All right.
By the way, we have the pre-show for tomorrow, Ack. It's going to have to do with a certain live album of a certain over the hill guy.
God. All right.
So we'll say tomorrow.
Be ready. We're going to talk about that tomorrow.
Be ready.
You guys are clueless. Okay. Here we go. All right. So the Islanders. Going to talk about the Islanders Stadium thing because I've been putting up rumors for the last couple of days, and people have been going kind of crazy about it and getting so many calls about this and texts about it and stuff like that. So where the Islanders are going to play in 2021, because it is definitely up for grabs right now. And there's huge issues with Nassau. There's huge issues with Barkley. The Islanders I was told the Islanders approached the Rangers and the Devils about playing games there with or without fans, and even Albany. Yesterday I was told Albany as well, which is another really interesting thing. The way this is all playing out, the Islanders really are scrambling right now for what they're going to do come December when you start the next season. And I think that it was interesting. I mean, the Rangers turned them down right away, which is not surprising.
Well, we talked about it. They have a terrible history of sharing when it goes back to the New York Americans, and they basically stated at that time they will never share again. And everybody who's ever owned the Rangers has kept that word.
Yeah. So there you have it. But what about Albany? Thoughts on Albany, guys? As far as
Albany would be terrible. Ooh.
Yeah, maybe Bridgeport.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why not just play at Bridgeport?
Yeah.
Unless
Bridgeport's a nice rink, actually.
Good question. I don't know. I do know Albany is the one that they were. I have to think at the end of the day they get something figured out with Nassau Coliseum, but I don't know.
They're not. Heck, it's $140 million. Who's going to just walk up and sign that check?
I don't know. I mean, it feels it's hard to say. Who's going to write that check? Or
could the league get involved in this circumstance?
Could the league get involved? Yeah, they could.
I don't think they would do it. Not now. Not with money being an issue for everybody.
Probably go back to Barclays and play. I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, maybe Barclays doesn't want him. That's what we don't know.
Yeah,
I think that's what's coming out. I think that's really what it is.
How about playing at the Videotron Center in Quebec City?
Yeah, right. Yes.
I mean, maybe UBS Arena will just, instead of paying for the naming rights, will just assume the debt for 1 year and carry it forward for the X number of years on the rights of the arena.
That's a leap.
Yeah, that's a leap.
That is a leap.
I used to work at UBS, so I used to work there. So
yeah, there
I can
you
be
go.
a little sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
all right. So
it's a thought, right?
I have to talk about
debt relief carried forward for instead of laying money out of pocket. It is a feasibility instead of actually paying for it. If you assume the debt, same thing, and extrapolate it over the number of years of the life of that contract, could do it.
Yeah. All right. So the other thing I've been talking about a lot is defensemen, because I've been working on my rumor chart, just about ready to have it up today. And I've been talking defense, and I mentioned, a couple guys the last couple of days. I know you guys probably talked about it yesterday. But if you didn't, anyway, either we'll get into it, is Krug and Ceci. And today I talked about Brendan Dillon. And Brendan Dillon, let me start with Brendan Dillon for a second, because Dillon's kind of like the forgotten about UFA in some ways, which is kind of strange, And I did some research. Because remember, he was a big pickup by the Capitals, big pickup. But they picked him up so early in the trade deadline process, like about a week before, I think even the deadline came, that, we really didn't end up talking about Brendan Dillon as much as we maybe could have before. And I think that, his value is a really interesting one, because talking around the league, people like Brendan Dillon quite a bit.
Sure. because unlike the defenseman in this free agent market, meaning Krug, Pietrangelo,
Right.
Tyson Berry, he's more of a stay-at-home defensive defenseman, big, tough. He doesn't fit the model of everybody else. But I think people believe that he'll be less expensive, but I don't know, because he made $3.2 million, a little over $3.2 million this final year with San Jose. The contract was split 50-50 when they traded him to the Caps. He's gonna make more just because we know that the market for defensemen, even though he's not an offensive defenseman, even though the cap's going to be flat at 81.5, there are teams out there that have cap space that need defensemen that will probably spend over $4 million. That's why, I know that you mentioned Toronto, and Toronto would love to have a defenseman like that, Eck, but one, he's left-handed, and two, he's going to cost over $4 million. They can't afford it.
He's going to be 30 years old.
Yeah.
And if he's costing $4 million or $4 million plus for 3 years, a lot of teams are going to shy away from that.
And I'm not casting aspersions on Dylan, but
but it's at the price.
Right. When I see a contract, when I hear the possibility of a contract like that at the age that he's going to be at, there's one name I think of, Anthony, and that's Carl Alzner, because he dropped off like a stone around the same age, and now that's an albatross around Mark Bergevin's neck.
Yeah.
Here's a key stat. Here's a key stat too. With San Jose, he only averaged 17.40 a game. With Washington, he averaged 20. There is a point. He is one of those defensemen where you've got to go somewhere between 17 and 20 with him, and that's why you can't pay him too much.
He's a number 3 I think on a team like the Capitals, he's probably in the right role where he's like a number 3, number 4 defenseman. Good solid support. For a partner who probably is going to look to spring load offensively a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's how you have to view him, and you have to set your price point at that area as well.
And normally, we've seen Washington over the last couple of years make trades for defensemen and then sign them to extensions. They did it with Kempny. They did it with Jensen. I think they're regretting the Jensen contract. Now they have Gudas and they have Dylan. Both were unrestricted free agents. They probably can only afford to sign one, and maybe they can't afford to sign either because they have to pay Holtby. So if they're going to bring back Holtby, I don't think they can bring back either one of those defensemen. They can't afford to.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a fair point. If they
I would think that they can. I would think that it feels like they're not going to bring him back. Even though. I mean, there was somebody I talked to this morning that said that they thought that the Caps were going to try to bring him back, but until that, most of the people I've been talking to said they weren't. So,
well, they'd have to. Let's just say this: they would have to trade Jensen's contract, which will be tough because he's got another 3 years at 2.5, and he's been a disappointment. They'd probably have to trade Richard Panik, who's making 2.75 for another 3 years. These deals are tough to move because they have term, and these are players who I think have not lived up to expectations. So good luck. I mean, if it was the following year, you could get rid of them to Seattle, but next year is that in-between year where you're looking for a dumping ground, and there are not many teams you can dump to.
I mean, you'd have to look to see as well as to whether or not there's teams that are contained. Like, for example, Matt Niskanen's contract was certainly considered in Washington to be an issue. Goes to Philadelphia, which had a lot of cap space. He fits in a different manner, and for now, that contract works perfectly well for Philadelphia's structure. But they're also at a different point from where the Capitals are in terms of trying to compete for Stanley Cups for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Versus Philly, who's just beginning to make that ascent now.
If I'm a team out there that might be in on Dylan, but Dylan's price tag is over $4 million, and he's going to want multiple years, I'll take Justin Braun for a year at probably $3 million, and you're going to be probably around the same in terms of talent.
Yeah, so, I could see that.
Yeah, I think Braun's probably better offensively than Dylan.
Yeah, his offensive numbers have come down the last few years for Braun. But again, he and Dylan are again, their profiles are different in that Braun has had a history of offensive numbers. I just don't know if they're going to be there. Especially, I mean, certainly he looks in Philadelphia. If he thinks he gets a top 4 opportunity elsewhere, he probably goes, because in Philly right now he's he's their number 5 defenseman right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, or even another option. I'd give a 2-year deal to Radko Gudas rather than give a 4 or 5-year deal for Brendan Dillon.
I think Gudas sounds to me like he's ready to. He doesn't want to be there almost in terms of some of the comments that he's seen the writing on the wall already there.
Right.
I don't think he's going to be staying. I do think he'll still get another NHL job. So
yeah.
Well, he's one of their best. He's one, if not their best, one of their best plus minuses on the team in Washington, right?
And strangely enough, Eck, he is a darling of the analytics crowd, even though he's not you wouldn't think that his type of defenseman would be a positive analytically, but he is.
He does really well. This was just to build into what Mike's saying. His neutral zone game is what really, if you look at his numbers, are what attracts teams, because he can blow up plays in the neutral zone. When it gets into his own end, and he's got to start chasing players around,
right?
It gets a little bit difficult. But if you're
then you get the hooking penalties.
Exactly, and that's the biggest concern. But it's his neutral zone effectiveness that would attract teams.
Yeah.
No,
and he's a good locker room guy. So
let's touch on the other 2 names that you mentioned, Eck.
Yeah.
Start with Krug.
Right.
Boston has the cap space to be able to sign him. And Russ said something a couple days ago that I think is accurate. If the Bruins win the cup, then I think Krug will go for the money and go out there and look for the best, biggest deal that he can. If the Bruins don't, I think he might be willing to take a little less in terms of money. He'll still want the term, but take a little less to fit in with the Bruins and stay there to hope to win.
Yeah.
Because if he's going out for the big money, he went to Michigan State. He's from Livonia. Mm-hmm. I could see Steve Yzerman backing up the Brinks truck and signing him, because that defense in Detroit is hideous. But
also, what I wrote about, and it is, it's true. Obviously, there's a certain head coach in Montreal that likes him quite a bit. That's a place where I was told flat out that Montreal is going to go hard after him if he hits the market. And I could see Montreal picking up Krug. I definitely see that. That feels like the perfect play for them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the only thing is then their power play gets a little crowded. But other than that, I see it being a good fit too. I guess Petrie would be gone.
Yeah, I think that would.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be the guy who shed.
Yeah, because he's got only a year left in the contract. So
yeah, and they're not that there's not going to be plenty of teams. Obviously, they'll be interested on Krug if he gets out there. He's going to be very sought after. He is. Yeah. The other name I brought up on that list was Cody Ceci.
Yeah.
I
have some opinions on that.
Yeah, a lot of the Toronto people definitely have opinions on this. So I got a ton of opinions on this one from Toronto.
Well, okay. Cody Ceci made $4.5 million last year. He will not make that this year. He will not get a 4-year or more deal. I think he'll get a 2-year deal at probably around $3 million, because he was exposed this year, especially by Mike Babcock early in the season, playing top pairing minutes along with Morgan Riley. He is a third, at best, a bad second pairing defenseman, but a pretty decent third pairing defenseman. And if you're a third pairing defenseman in this league, you're going to be making probably $2.5 to $3 million. So I think he's going to get a contract, and a team like a Winnipeg who needs a right-handed defenseman makes a ton of sense, because they can get him for a shorter term and relatively cheap, but he'll never get what he's been making over the last couple of years with Ottawa, because he's not as good as they thought he was going to be when they signed those deals.
I get that. But I also wrote that I thought Toronto would try to keep him. And I went in. So if Toronto is not going to try to keep him, even though I was told by somebody in Toronto that they are going to try to keep him, but you're saying no, and a lot of all Toronto fans feel no as well. Only if they gets down to how are you going to replace him with? I think that's
okay. I'll just say this as a caveat: only if he took a year, and only if he took $2 to $2.5 million, which he's not going to, because he's going to go out and look for a multi-year deal for as much money as he can get. What will Toronto do? Toronto will play Rasmus Sandin and will play Timothy Liljegren. They're going to go with young guys. Barry is gone. Ceci is most likely gone. They'll go with the 2 kids, They have the Finnish defenseman who played in the KHL last year. He'll get a chance to make the.
I think he'll make the team. I do.
Yeah. So I mean, that's 7 defensemen with what they have right now. So I think that's what they're going to go for.
Look, he's 26. He gets you 5 to 7 goals a year, 19 to 25 points a year on most years,
right?
And he plays around 20, 24 minutes a game. Teams are going to want him.
Yeah.
And I could see him getting
Mikko Lehtinen
a 3-year deal if somebody really needs a defenseman because, as an example, like you said, Winnipeg, they really need a defenseman. And Cece's an excellent skater. Like, yes. Is he the best defender? No. Is he the best offensive defenseman? No. But he's a pretty good NHL defenseman. And if you do put him in the right system, he's better than what he's showing in Toronto, I think.
Right. I think he's a good 5'6".
Yeah.
He's a bad 4, and the Leafs used him as a 2 this year.
Yeah,
and I think that's the problem with what Toronto is trying to, with the opinions of Toronto is that he was overplayed in different situations.
Well, it was because
I think he's more of like a 4. I don't think he's a bad 4. I think he's like a 4 or 5. He's in that range somewhere. I don't. He's not going to be your worst defenseman. He's not going to be your 6th defenseman. He's not your 7th defenseman.
It was because Babcock was obsessed with the left-right combo,
right?
And he couldn't play Justin Hall on the top pair, and he couldn't put Tyson Barrie because he didn't trust him defensively with Riley. So by process of elimination, it was Cece, and then that's unfair to Cece. But of course, he was attacked early on in Toronto because he made some bad giveaways. I don't think he's a bad defenseman. I just don't think he's a top 4 defenseman.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the edge of that to me. I'm not going to totally disagree with you.
But the thing is, online, Leafs fans are giving him the Corey Cross treatment, and it's not fair.
Oh, yeah, that's it. It's insane. I mean, I know the Islanders have interest. I know there's teams out there. I'm sure the Jets will.
The Islanders would have to shed either Letty or Boychuk, though. I don't think they're just going to be able to get him.
I will go on a limb and say Cody Cece is much better than Martin Marincin.
Right.
Wow. What a ledge to get on, Mike. You're brave.
That's the only thing that people seem to agree with, actually. I got that a lot, too. Like, it's amazing. The opinions on Cody Cece in Toronto are pretty intense. Like, they are real. And I get why, because of this, like you said, he was played out of position not out of position, but played, I mean, what kind of a year did, we sit there and talk about it, what kind of a year does he have if he's not in Toronto and not playing in that position? He's had 2 weird spots, being in Ottawa, on a terrible Ottawa team, and then playing the 2 spot on a really bad defensive team in Toronto.
Being on the Senators as a former Senator 1st-round pick from the city of Ottawa.
Yeah,
and they turned on him after years and years. And I mean, okay, maybe he was a disappointment based on what they thought he was going to be and what he ended up being. But I don't think he was a bad defenseman. And then they dumped him. They took back Nikita Zaitsev in that deal, and CC was just okay. Just to use the Randy Carlisle line, he was just okay. He wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He was just okay. So I'm not gonna slam him because that's all he was. But
what kind of year did Morgan Riley have?
Morgan Riley had a disappointing year, but he was injured for most of the year. So
injured for most of the year. So that plays into it too. So that
and Barry didn't have a great year either.
Yeah, well, Barry had a horrible.
Who on the Leafs was good at defense? Period this year.
Jake Muzzin.
That's it.
Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall.
Hall was good. Yeah.
And then when they called him up Sandin, but he made some rookie mistakes, which is understandable.
I mean, it's just not a good defensive team.
No,
it's not a good defensive team for sure. All right, let's get into let's talk for a second about the Dallas Stars, which we wanted to get into today, because they are kind of like this is like a really bizarre dark horse for me, Dallas. Like and. Every year, Dallas never gets respect. No one ever says Dallas is going to be good. And every year they're pretty darn good. And then they have their moments. And this year they have some really good goaltending. They really have. That's one thing they have going for them.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of surprising that people are not putting more in. Like, I think if you look at teams that could come out of the West, this is a team that could.
Yeah, but this team is such a Jekyll and Hyde because
they are. I think that's what's so hard about them, right?
Remember 3 years ago. Their goaltending and their defense was an open door. Basically, they were hideous defensively, and now under Montgomery and then Rick Bowness, they allowed 177 goals against, which I think was second. No, it was tops in the league. by 10 goals. It was number 1 in the league. But they only scored with Sagan, with Ben, with Radulov, with some decent offensive players. They only scored 180 goals. So every game is going to be 2-1 in the playoffs.
Well, but I think you need to look at things just in the bonus era because defense got a lot better. I didn't know what kind of coach he would be, and he was maybe in his first week of coaching when he was coaching the Winter Classic. And so we got a lot of time with bonus for like 2 or 3 different interviews. And so I paid attention to it, and I realized that the players really like him. The players are playing much harder for him than they ever did for Lindy before he left and for Hitchcock for sure. And I think you can't say enough about that. Bishop was having a great year no matter what. So like people are expecting Ben Bishop to get hurt, but right now he's not hurt. So that's a plus for them too. But now that they play a defensive system, if they could get a few goals, they are a dangerous team. I agree with that.
Well,
you look at Lindell, right, who I think had a pretty decent year. You look at Heiskanen, who maybe dropped a little bit from last year, but still top. Klingberg had a rough start to the season, and he started coming around. And getting Steven Johns back can't be overlooked because Johns gives them another element that they really lack. The question is, offensively, what are you going to get? Because a lot of the guys, as you talk about the big names, Radulov had a really uneven season at best compared to his prior year. Jamie Benn was very up and down. Pavelski was okay, but those are guys who said the names on the back didn't necessarily match the stats that you expected. Right. If they get a mild uptick, then they become a really dangerous team. If not, then it's going to be a lot of 2-1 battles where they're going to have to win games with the defense and Bishop carrying them.
Well, Anthony, some people believe that because they've got a lot of forwards long in the tooth, and Jan mentioned 2 of them, Pavelski, Ben, and Corey Perry, that being off for 4 months and being well rested will give them an advantage because, there's not going to be that fatigue with a normal 6-month long stretch toward then going into a playoffs.
It could, but then when you have quite a few players in that age bracket there, are they all going to be firing on all cylinders right from the beginning or not? And that's a big question, and that to me is a little bit of a question for them. That being said, them playing the style that they're playing under bonus, defensively, I think helps to conserve older players' energy in a lot of cases because you're playing more of a read and react versus playing a high, strong forecheck that would probably wear older players down pretty quickly. Yeah. So we'll have to see. It's interesting to see. It's a fascinating mix, the Stars. There's no question about that. And if they can get everything going on all cylinders, they could be. They have a chance of being a pretty tough out.
I would say this too. Don't sleep. They do have some youngsters. Gurianov and Hintz are excellent. Matter of fact, Gurianov had one of the weirdest years because he had 20 goals and only 9 assists. But he gets them with his speed. If he gets a little bit of a head of steam going, really nobody could catch him. This kid is grease lightning. And I think he gets hidden playing for Dallas. But now that it's the playoffs, I think people are going to really see how fast Gurianov is and how good Hintz is as far as puck possession and getting the puck in the net. I mean, he had 19 goals. I mean, nobody would think Rupe Hintz had 19 goals, but he was one of their better players.
He really was.
Gurianov was either vying for the Cy Young or the Brandon Peary Award because no assists at all.
Which by the way, when we were talking earlier about Brendan Dillon, he had no point, no assists, no goals, no assists in 10 games for the Capitals. Nothing.
He did his job.
-2. -2. He really do. I don't know how good he was.
He had good board work there, Eck. He was playing good. He was engaging. He was making sure those lanes weren't open for them.
Yeah, right. Sure, why not?
But, I mean, you could say that Dallas plays the playoff style that you need to play to be successful. But you also, let's just say their power play is going to be a big key for them advancing in the playoffs because, if they're not getting a lot of goals 5-on-5, and they're going to need Bishop to play like Bishop did during the regular season, which I think he was a borderline Vezina candidate. So if they get that, they could go deep. They could come out of the West. Who knows?
They really could.
I wonder, I'm sure he's in the bubble, Jason Robertson. If he gets some playing time in the playoffs, he is a big body with a great shot. And that's the kind of kid that you could put in there because he's strong. He's about 200 pounds, and he can really play. And that's another guy they might have to add if their offense is stagnant.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I just think they're going to be fun to watch, and they're the kind of team they feel like that no one in the West wants to play. When you ask around about them, they really are like the kind of team that you just don't want to don't want to have to play against. And I like them. I mean, their matchups are interesting because they didn't play that well against the teams that are in the playoffs. They were one of those teams that played really well against the Eastern Conference and really well against teams that did make the playoffs. So they struggle a little bit against the teams that are in it. But they were like all up and they were all over the place this season. So where they end up is the big. I mean, they lost 6 in a row to end the whole thing.
Yeah, but it wasn't a true end to a season. So we don't know if they'd have won their next 6, right? Like that's the only way. I can't look at it that way.
No, for sure. But I think that there is something to the last thing you did. I mean, they spent the last 5 months realizing they lost 6 in a row. That's not a fun thing to do. Like that's not the way you want to spend those 6 months or 5 months. I mean, so they're going to want, they got to get that first win under their belt. And, that's kind of, going to be funky playing, jumping right into play in games, like you're really a tough spot for them to be in for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Bishop had 40, or what do you have? A 920 save percentage. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Plus, play in Vegas. That's a tough first round match, That's the other thing. I think that if they get through that then they're dangerous. Right. But I think,
but it's not like they've never played them. It's, they know what Vegas is about, and they know Bishop's going to know that, hey, I can't give up too many in this series. And, he could be a focused guy. That's one where, you look at it and you say, boy, Vegas should win and everything else. But Bishop could have a big factor on this.
Well, here might be another factor. According to Sean Shapiro, who covers the Stars, the Stars have decided they won't wear suits in the bubble. They want to look good and professional with nicer jeans and good collared shirts. No ripped jeans or hats, for example, but no suits.
Yeah,
but no cowboy hats. I mean, come on. This
is
opportunity.
I don't understand why anybody worries about what they're wearing in the bubble, because we're not going to see it. We don't need to see it. If they're, they don't have to video these guys going into the locker room. They don't. And so let them wear what they want to wear. Who cares?
Anthony, it's not like they're going to be wearing a Pecan Lodge t-shirt with the drippings from brisket all over it.
And if they did, fine.
There you go. I mean, did you see Elias Pettersson talked about that actually, about like what they're going to wear in the bubble, and said, because he's apparently really like one of these like Lundqvist type styling type characters.
Yeah.
And it was like, people were going to ask him, are you going to be stylish? And he's like, yeah, well, I'd like to be, but I'll probably end up having to wear like, Vancouver Canucks sweatsuits or whatever.
Oh, they go with the tracksuit.
Yeah, you save your own. You save your own clothes anyway, so it's like
Yeah. It worked for Vander Kane.
It's funny though, guys. Like there are guys in the NHL that want to go. They want to have that attitude, and I think it's pretty funny when they do. I think like what we've seen with Lundqvist is obviously, like we've waited. Russ and I waited for a press conference one time forever. Remember, they'll never forget that.
It was 1 a.m. We were worried about making the last train.
Yeah, to get home, and we're waiting for Lundqvist to get his hair done. Basically,
he's putting mousse in his hair. Like, come on, Henrik.
Yeah.
Vidal Sassoon.
So they were the Stars were over the last couple seasons against Vegas were 1-4.
I got lost in his dreamy blue eyes.
I was trying to say that the Stars over the last couple seasons were 1-4 against Vegas. So Vegas has had their number and kept them. And the big thing about Dallas is they've scored like 1 goal in 3 of those 5 games. So Dallas has had a tough time scoring on Vegas.
And that's why I probably use the youngsters, because it would mix it up against the team that probably feels like they have their number. That could change things.
Yeah, for sure. So
but I don't know what was their record with bonus playing them. That might be, might not be as bad.
Well, this year they were 1-1 against.
Yes,
they were 0-3 last year. They're 1-1 this year, and they did put up. They won 1, and they were actually 1-0-1 So the Vegas game.
Okay, so that's better.
They were early games. They're both in November, so it's really hard to say.
Yeah, so bonus hasn't faced they haven't faced this bonus team.
Right.
Under bonus, they were 20, 13, and 5.
Yeah, they were noticeably better. Like they were.
Yeah. So this will be I think it's a tough series. I'm still going with Vegas probably in this thing as a pick, but if they get by Vegas, I could see Dallas being trouble for the top teams. That I could really see.
By the way, they're part of the round. They're part of the round robin, correct? So we don't know who their first round match is.
Oh, I thought we had said.
No, they're
confused. Who am I confused? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, and Dallas. They're part of the round robin, so they.
Oh, right. Gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no. So they depending on what
They're playing Vegas. I was losing. I'm sorry. I'm getting.
They're playing Vegas in the first game of the round robin. Probably.
I apologize, everyone. Thank you.
No. It's okay. I mean, just
And Bishop actually won his last game with a 951 save percentage. He made 41 saves, so he left this season on pretty good terms.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, Bishop was the biggest reason they got to Game 7 of overtime against St. Louis. If he plays like that again, and they get a little bit of offense, they could make a deeper run this year.
Yep,
no question about it. No question about it. Well, it's about all the time we have for today, guys. I really appreciate everybody joining and jumping on. And remember, we'll be back again tomorrow as we get really close. We're just a week, a little bit away. I mean, I'm supposed to go to the shore, August 1st and August 2nd. And I'm telling my family, just, we're going to go to the beach and going to have to bring a television down there or something like that to watch games on those days. Because you got 13 hours of hockey coming on.
Or you can watch it on your phone.
It all starts on a weekend. Yeah,
or your laptop. Yeah.
There you go. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.